A confidential report just leaked from Aston Martin, and it doesn't include Lance Stroll in the team's long-term future. Why would a team owned by his own father start planning a future without him right after hiring Adrian Newey? What you're about to uncover is a strategy document that changes everything from car philosophy to driver priority, and it's not in Lance's favor. And here's the real shocker: if this leak is real, Stroll might not even finish the 2025 season as a Formula One driver. What makes this leak so explosive isn't just what it says, it's who it came from. According to multiple insider sources, the document outlining Aston Martin's 2026 technical roadmap wasn't a draft, or a concept, or a speculative wish list. It was a finalized performance planning brief meant only for senior technical staff, lead strategists, and executive decision-makers. Somehow, it slipped out. And when analysts began decoding the structure, one detail stood out immediately. In every projected simulation, in every driver pair benchmark, Lance Stroll's name was nowhere to be found. Not as a starter. Not even as a testing option. It was as if, in Adrian Newey's vision of Aston Martin's future, Lance doesn't exist. That absence is no accident. The report centers on how Aston Martin will restructure its development approach around Newey's aerodynamic principles, which demand a driver lineup capable of operating under extreme cornering loads, unstable aero windows, and high-degradation strategy profiles. In plain terms, the next-generation car is going to be difficult to drive at the limit. Precision and adaptability will be critical. And buried within the data tables was a chilling annotation translated loosely from engineering shorthand: second seat must be optimized for adaptability under transient yaw instability. That is, quite literally, the exact weakness Lance Stroll has struggled with his entire career. So why now? Why would Aston Martin risk this kind of internal fracture just months before the 2026 car enters development? The answer lies in the timing of Adrian Newey's unofficial alignment with the team. While not formally announced, Newey has been consulting on next-gen architecture for several months, an effort accelerated after multiple simulation validation errors reportedly traced back to driver misinputs during early wind tunnel correlation. Translation? They believe Stroll's feedback loop is corrupting the data stream. And for a team built around aero-first philosophy, that's not just inconvenient, it's catastrophic. But here's where things get truly political. While Lance Stroll has always been the ultimate authority at Aston Martin, the Newey partnership signals something deeper: a shift from family-led ambition to performance-driven governance. Sources inside the organization describe a quiet realignment of decision-making power away from Lance's inner circle and toward a newly forming technical council centered around Newey, Dan Fallows, and a yet unnamed operations chief. And once that axis is complete, it won't matter who owns the team. The car, the data, and the results will do the talking. And if Lance can't keep up, even his last name won't protect him. This isn't just a driver pressure story. It's a legacy crisis. Lance Stroll's entire Formula One journey has existed under the umbrella of family control, his career path protected from the brutal meritocracy that governs most drivers' lives. But now, with the team aiming for championship contention in 2026, that safety net is being pulled away. Internally, staff are reportedly divided. Some believe Lance still has untapped potential and deserves another full season to prove himself under the 2026 spec evolution. Others believe that every lap he runs in the current car is a waste of development feedback and that a replacement should be found before the season is lost. Even in the media, the tone has shifted. Headlines once focused on Aston Martin's bold future are now loaded with questions about whether Lance will survive to see it. Journalists have noticed the cold body language between Newey and Lance during paddock walks. Driver analysts are beginning to openly rank Aston Martin's second seat as one of the most vulnerable in 2025. And most tellingly, sponsors are beginning to push for clarity. No one wants to invest millions into a driver who may be functionally invisible in the team's most important season. This isn't just about performance, it's about image, narrative, and belief. Which leads us to the most brutal truth of all: the leak wasn't designed to humiliate Lance, it was designed to pressure him. To push him toward transformation, or toward the exit. The message is clear: deliver consistent, world-class feedback and results, or be replaced. Not next year. Not mid-season. Possibly before the 2026 car even hits the track. Because in Adrian Newey's vision for Aston Martin, there's no room for sentiment. Only speed, synergy, and surgical execution. And if Lance can't be part of that machine, he'll be the first part removed. As the pressure mounts, Lance Stroll finds himself in a position no Formula One driver ever wants to occupy, driving with a countdown clock over his head. Every sector time, every tire feedback note, every corner exit is being dissected, not just for lap time, but for technical value. Aston Martin isn't just asking, is he fast enough? They're now asking, is he usable for development? That's a brutal shift. Because once a driver is labeled as technically unreliable, it doesn't matter how much pace he shows on Sunday, he becomes a liability from Monday to Saturday. And for a team trying to build the most advanced car in its history, that's a risk they may no longer tolerate. The worst part for Lance? There's no easy way to fight back. Publicly complaining would only make him look defensive. Privately confronting Newey or the technical team could fracture relationships even further. So, he's trapped caught in a silent battle where every mistake, every misjudged comment, every mediocre qualifying session feeds the narrative that he's being outgrown by the very machine his father helped build. And as more data leaks trickle out, the perception of inevitability grows. Not because he's not trying, but because the ceiling of his contribution may already have been reached. And it's not just the engineers who sense it. Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin's lead driver and the ultimate political predator, has remained tactically quiet throughout this saga. But insiders suggest Alonso has already positioned himself as the anchor of the Newey project. He's involved in simulation development, PU integration conversations, and even midterm planning that extends beyond 2025. In one internal strategy session, Alonso reportedly referred to the future car as our legacy machine, a statement that, intentionally or not, draws a stark contrast between his centrality and Lance's growing irrelevance. There's only room for one long-term vision, and Lance isn't part of that conversation. This creates a psychological dynamic that is almost impossible to overcome. Lance now races not just to score points but to disprove an entire internal system that may already be writing him off. Every teammate outlap becomes a threat. Every slip-up a data point. And the paddock knows it. When drivers get trapped in this kind of pressure spiral, it doesn't just affect their performance, it alters how they train, how they prepare, and how they communicate. Confidence turns to overcorrection. Natural rhythm becomes mechanical. And once that starts, it's hard to recover, especially when the stopwatch starts confirming what the politics already suspect. The team's silence has also become a message in itself. There have been no public statements defending Lance. No clarifying words from Lance Stroll. No denial of the leaked development report. That absence is deafening. Because in Formula One, silence from management rarely signals unity, it signals uncertainty, or worse, a strategy shift already in motion. Multiple sources suggest that Aston Martin has begun exploratory conversations with alternative drivers for 2026, not just as a backup, but as a structural fit for Newey's car philosophy. These aren't headline names yet, but the kinds of drivers known for surgical precision, detailed feedback, and aerodynamic sensitivity. And that brings us to the legacy issue. If Lance Stroll is quietly pushed out or slowly faded into the background, it will reshape how the Aston Martin project is remembered. What began as a father-son empire could end as a classic F1 tale of performance over politics. That's not just tragic, it's symbolic. Because in the end, even billionaire backing can't override the cold logic of speed, data, and results. Newey doesn't care about sentiment. Fallows doesn't build around PR optics. And Alonso, if nothing else, thrives when his teammates implode under pressure. If Lance wants to rewrite that script, he'll need the drive of his life every weekend, with no margin for error. So, what happens next? Does Lance pull off the unthinkable, silencing critics, outperforming expectations, and earning a rightful place in the very team built around him? Or does this leak mark the beginning of a slow, strategic exit where the paddock already knows the outcome, but waits for it to play out? One thing is certain, Aston Martin's 2026 revolution has already begun. And the question now isn't whether Lance can drive the car. It's whether he was ever truly meant to. The biggest question surrounding Lance Stroll's future isn't whether he can improve, it's whether improvement is even enough anymore. When a team hires Adrian Newey, it isn't just buying technical genius. It's committing to a ruthless performance culture where every decision is measured in milliseconds and simulation deltas. In that world, potential means nothing. Only execution counts. And right now, the internal metrics reportedly being used to assess driver performance are far beyond traditional points or podiums. They're looking at adaptability curves, aerodynamic sensitivity ratings, and feedback integrity indexes. It's not about being good. It's about being optimal. And that's where Lance might already be trailing the cutoff line. That pressure extends beyond Lance as a driver, it cuts deep into the Stroll family project. For years, Aston Martin was viewed through the lens of a billionaire's dream, a hand-built team to elevate his son to the highest stage of motorsport. It was always ambitious, often criticized, but occasionally brilliant. And now, just as the infrastructure is finally ready, the new factory complete, the wind tunnel active, the Newey plan in motion, the one piece that seems misaligned is the driver it was all meant to elevate. If Lance Stroll greenlights a replacement, it won't just be a strategic pivot. It will be the quiet burial of the team's founding story. And that's what makes this moment so emotionally complex. Because if Lance stays and succeeds, he validates not just himself but the entire Stroll legacy. He proves that belief, persistence, and evolution can overcome public skepticism and internal doubt. But if he falters and is removed, the narrative shifts instantly. It becomes a tale of ambition overtaken by reality, of a driver carried too long by the structure around him, only to be undone by the very excellence that structure was meant to deliver. Either way, history is being written now, not in the media, not in the garage, but in the data logs and development decisions happening behind closed doors. Make no mistake, Aston Martin isn't slowing down. Their 2026 project has already been nicknamed AMR Red Zero, internally a quiet nod to the Red Bull-style philosophy being integrated by Newey and Fallows. The team is expected to build the most aerodynamically aggressive chassis in its history. And with Mercedes power, an ultra-efficient packaging concept, and a technical department that now includes some of the sport's most influential minds, they're aiming to break into the elite tier immediately. But here's the brutal irony: the more advanced the car becomes, the less room there is for a developmental passenger. The sharper the knife, the harder it is to hold if you're not a specialist. That's why this story matters, not just for Lance Stroll, but for the very soul of the team. Aston Martin has reached a crossroads where sentiment and strategy are colliding head-on. Will they honor the origins of the project and keep faith in the driver who's been part of every step? Or will they complete their transformation into a cold, elite performance machine that discards anything or anyone who doesn't fit the future? It's a moral dilemma dressed in carbon fiber and telemetry. And no matter how it ends, it will define the character of this team for years to come. Fans watching this unfold are feeling it too. The debates are louder. The stakes are more personal. Because Lance isn't just a driver now, he's a symbol. To some, he represents opportunity unearned. To others, resilience misunderstood. And for many, he's simply the question mark in an equation that's otherwise starting to look like a championship contender. That's why this leak hit so hard. It wasn't just about data. It was about the fragility of belonging in a sport that tolerates no weakness, not even from within your own family. So as we look toward 2025 testing and the shadow of Newey's 2026 masterpiece begins to take shape, one thing is clear: the clock is ticking louder than ever. Lance Stroll isn't just racing for points anymore. He's racing for narrative control, for relevance, for survival. And the next time he climbs into that cockpit, the biggest battle won't be against tire wear or DRS trains. It'll be against the creeping realization that Formula One might be moving on without him.